Hi, everyone. It's Ryan Fowler here with my good friends Tim Costello, Jordan Kurtz, Inner Game Group live every Saturday at this time. And today we are going to look at a clip interview Tom Bilyeu and Dr. Drew Pinksy. And they're talking about a very core thing today, which is how our identity drives behavior. And we are all about the two things we shift. I mean, we shift core beliefs. That's what we do. We rewire the brain using hypnosis and some neuroscience-based techniques to rewire core identity, and then what's called core schema, which is our belief about the world around us, these really deep core things. So they're going to talk about how it's almost impossible to change if you don't do this. And so Dr. Drew has some very interesting insights. It's going to be a great show. But before we start looking at that, Jordan and then Tim, welcome to the show. Introduce yourselves.
You're muted. You're muted, Jordan.
We'll let you go first, Tim. Tim and then Jordan.
I'm Tim with Tim Costello Hypnosis.
Next step.
And what's really interesting is these guys are going to talk about the things that we do all the time. They're very close to what we do, but they just don't have the knowledge of it yet. And what's key with what our process that Jordan, Ryan, and I all do is we identify what needs to change. You know, sometimes people sort of look at themselves and go, something needs to change, and they're going to go read a book and go, I'm going to go do this. But what really needs to change is their core identity. And they'll mention that here. And Ryan just mentioned we change your core beliefs. Your core beliefs form your core identity. When you fundamentally change that to the root, great success and wonderful things happen. Take it away, Jordan.
Figured out. It was my mic switch. Now can you hear me?
Yep.
It's always something.
I got one of those cough buttons
Happens
Tim
to me
recommended, and it works. Clearly, it works.
Yep.
So I found that this Tom Bilyeu interview, what I was doing last night, as I scrolled back through a lot of his oldest interviews, because recently he's been sort of, I don't know, I think he's been talking about more current events, kind of clickbaity stuff. So it wasn't this interesting.
His older stuff's even more mindset heavy.
Yeah. And so the title of this one is Why Disgust is the Best Motivation. And I think we've probably talked about it before, how we kind of don't like that as a motivation. We call that dirty fuel, where
I'm actually not against it. We'll discuss it later.
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm against toxic shame. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
And so he has, well, it's all good. So that kind of title, I figured we'd have some thoughts certainly on it. I'd never really heard of Dr. Drew before, but it sounds like he has a very good handle on, like Ryan was saying, how we change and stuff like that. So, Ryan, did you have a specific time you wanted to set at? I said 14 minutes.
At the 14-minute mark is great.
Okay.
And we're going to have an interesting discussion of disgust versus toxic shame, because there are two different things. And Dr. Drew actually, at least part of what I watched here, he talks about the distinction between the two. I will say I almost named this show How Negative Emotions Can Serve Us, because some negative emotions can serve us. I mean, all of our emotions we have for a reason. You know, there's an evolutionary survival-based reason to feel sad, to feel angry, anxious, all these other things. It's we can oftentimes feel them in a way that are very counterproductive. You know, you're the guy who shot Charlie Kirk. I think he's regretting his anger and rage that has now ruined his life and the life of Charlie and Charlie's family. And, you know, so that is negative emotion not serving us, causing problems. But when they get into talking about disgust, there are some negative emotions that can serve us. Like if you see a bear, you should be afraid, because that's going to say, hey, keep your distance from that bear so you don't get mauled, you know? So there's a point to that, and they're going to cover that today in addition to identity. But what we do, of course, is when you have negative beliefs tied to negative emotions that don't serve you, that are causing huge problems, that's why that's when people come to us and we literally change that. And it's all tied to core identity, core beliefs. Again, core schema is about the outside world, the world's unsafe, or there's opportunity in the world. Core belief is I'm good enough or I'm not good enough. I can do things or I can't, all that. So it'll be an interesting discussion today. And we'll touch on both of these topics, core beliefs and also negative emotions, how they can be good and how also they can be bad. So that's my take, but we'll dive into it first. And then Carrie, Leopard Leatherworks, welcome to the show. And if you guys have anything you want to add, is there anything you want to add before we start playing this clip, Jordan or Tim, to
I'm pretty good there.
Preface it? Okay. So right at the 14-minute mark, let's dive in.
Yep. All right.
Where does your self emerge? How does a self develop? How does that happen?
You really want me to answer?
Yeah.
From
its inception.
Yeah.
How does it happen?
I'm going to give you a really bad answer, and this is why I love doing the show, because you've planted a seed now that is, I think, going to fundamentally shift the way that I think about this. Prior to researching you, here's how I thought about it. Certainly, the genetics plays a role.
For sure.
Certainly, early environment plays a huge role. Attachment style of the mother.
Okay. So what about that early environment? Where? I mean, I'm going to jump to this chase. The first thing we know for sure, the first thing the child is able to do is focus externally, and it tends to be focused on partially contingent phenomenologies. So things like pushing a mobile, pulling the cat's tail, but we have giant areas of our brain dedicated to the face, right? The fusiform gyrus, we look at faces, we can analyze micro movements of our musculature in our face, and that happens early. So the first thing we're doing is mother comes into focus, and it's in the relationship with mom and dad that the self, the experiences of the self emerge. It's first other. That's the first thing. And then these spontaneous, whatever we're having, these bodily based spontaneous experiences we call emotions that kind of wash over us when we're little. Mom is focusing on us, and what the research shows reflects on her face through micro movements of her face and appreciation of our bodily based experiences. And we learn that that's our experience. Yes, that's me. I'm seeing it reflected on your face. And not only that, mom offers soothing affects alongside of those identified second order representations. She attunes to us and gives us the interpersonal capacity for regulation.
Right.
So those feelings that when we're a baby just wash over us. It's that attunement of the other body. I mean, literally the hippus or the pupils of mom and child start moving together.
That's great.
Pupillary hippus, and our heart rates go the same, and our blood pressures team up. I mean, that's just what happens.
How the hell does blood pressure team? Like, I can sort of get a heartbeat because it's like there's something really happening.
Yeah.
But blood pressure? I mean, that's constriction of.
It's essentially. I don't know that I can tell you for certain that there's exact blood pressure because adult and children are very, very different. But it's to say that the internal physiological milieu matches.
That's so weird. It's like women getting their periods in sync and everything. It's so weird.
Weird. That's not this part of our nervous system. That's this part, right? And we ignored it. We largely ignore it. Now, you asked me, how do you get the mind-body connection?
Yeah, and before you answer that, is this part of why you started working out? Because I've always found that fascinating about you.
No, I think I have a little body dysmorphia and that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, that's honest.
That's the usual reasons. And now it's become my meditation. Now I get uncomfortable when I don't do it. I listen to lectures and I listen to programs like this. And now I'm fighting the clock. I'm fighting aging too. And so I'm happy that I have that compulsion.
So going back to your question about how the self emerges is maybe less interesting to me than how do you take control of the self as an adult who's self-aware, that has things like mindfulness and mind-body connection and all that, to be able to sculpt and change your vision of yourself, which then I believe, now I'll talk about that in terms of identity, and then how identity drives behavior. And my whole thing to people is if you want to change your behavior, change your identity.
Okay.
Which I believe as an adult you can do.
I agree. I don't disagree with any of that.
So that's like the angle that I'm coming at this from. Like, how do we begin to construct our sense of self in a directed, meaningful way through things like the mind-body connection?
Yeah. a couple things occur to me. One is, we have a sort of a saying in recovery. It's, lead a certain kind of life. Start being rigorously honest, start being helpful, start doing things, contrary, whatever your ideas, do the contrary, these sort of things. And guess what? When you start behaving a certain way, you'll start feeling a different way. And you'll start thinking of yourself.
Let's hang on there
way.
for a
start
second.
Internalizing some of these things. So one of the things is behavior.
So there are two things I want to point out here. One, they talked about changing the identity if you really want to change. And then they go on to say, now you can go read a book and you can find out about something and you want to sort of participate in this activity. That will work for a while. And over time, if you continue to repeat it, it will help you change your identity a little bit. But what's key is changing your core identity is a process of neuroplasticity, which they'll mention later. And you can do the cognitive thing where you're, consciously trying to do something to change your situation or circumstances. But eventually, if you get triggered, you'll fall back into what your true core identity is. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'm just gonna show some stuff I often show about identity and habits to show that it's Dr. Drew. This is not an isolated opinion. Like, there's a lot of consensus, and I'm going to share my screen among in the scientific world that identity drives behavior. So let me actually go. Oops, that's this. Well, I'll play this one first. And then I'm gonna show you this guy, Harvard-trained psychiatrist, on Diary of a CEO, and talking about your sense of who you are. And then I'll show Atomic Habits, best-selling book in history on habits, and what the author of that book says, and also what Google says. Like, this is really, really essential if you want to get in better shape and maintain it, or lose weight, or upgrade your career, or its identity is the absolute core. So we'll start with this, just quick clips here.
I go into a job interview and I feel lack of confidence.
Not sharing, Ryan.
Oh, it says it's sharing, but it's not. Okay, hold on. Well, share screen. Dr. K. All right. You guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If I believe I'm a loser, then I'm not interview at the time, so it kind of makes sense. But this becomes
a little low.
If I go into a job,
Turn the volume up on the video.
I feel a lack of confidence.
There you go.
Believe I'm a.
Here we go.
If I go into a job interview and I feel a lack of confidence, if I believe I'm a loser, then I'm not going to get the job. You used to go to clubs and buy bottles of champagnes and thought that you were a loser, didn't end up where you wanted to go. So this is what a lot of people don't understand. Everyone's focused on productivity. But the single most important thing that will determine your future is your sense of who you are. And that's not like some, spiritual, get connected with you. This is like fucking science, right? If you believe you are a loser, the empathic circuits of other people's brains will detect that in you and they will treat you like a loser. You carry who you are with you. That's why you get into failed relationship number 1, failed relationship number 2, failed relationship number 3, until you changed.
Okay, so the thing I want to bring up here is your sense of identity has a huge impact, not only on your behavior, but on how others perceive and treat you as well. Dr. Drew was just talking about how mother and child, how their pupil dilation will sink and their blood pressure sinks. And, there's, it's a well-observed phenomenon. You get women who are roommates, and over time their menstrual cycles sync up and synchronize. And our subconscious mind has this amazing ability to detect what's going on with other people, give us a vibe about them, and then we have a strong tendency to treat them accordingly. And that's what he's talking about. But he's also saying, until you change your sense of who you are, your circumstance, you're going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over. Failed relationship number 1, 2, 3, etc. Just want to show this other one real quick. And so here's Google, and then I will go into an actual article. Identity-based habits are actions tied to your sense of self, shifting the focus.
Are you sharing something else?
Is it not doing it again? Oh, okay. I messed up. My bad. Okay. That's me. Okay. Identity-based habits are actions tied to your sense of self, shifting the focus from external outcomes to internal transformation. So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Who do I want to become? And that is what actually leads to change. Is change your sense of self, then you change, and then your behavior automatically aligns with that. Now, later on, he's going to talk about, Dr. Drew's going to talk about this lady who lost weight and what happened internally to get her to shift. She made the internal change first. It's very, very interesting. But if you look at this here, the key to building lasting habits right here. This is from chapter 2 of the best-selling book on habits and history, Atomic Habits. The key to building lasting habits is focusing on creating a new identity. Our behaviors are a reflection of our identity. What we do is a mirror image of who we believe we are. To change our behavior for good, sustainably, we need to shift our identity. And then the habits. So what happened with me is I found these techniques 13 years ago, fixed all sorts of stuff within me. And then within 2 or 3 years, my income went up 2.5 times. And it eventually quadrupled. And I sustained that for like a decade. And then, switch business down to this. Now I'm rebuilding this. I'm building a new business. But it was permanent, sustainable adjustment to my income. Why? Because my sense of self changed. And we have everyone here, Jordan, Tim, we all see this client. We change their core identity, core beliefs, and then clients just take off and have way better success. We see it time after time after time after time. We don't guarantee that for our clients, but we just observe that it happens all the time. Big permanent change. I have people come to me who just took my self-hypnosis, which again, you can access the free basic version down there, the banner down there, school.com/RyanFowlerSOS -7231. I had a guy take that free self-hypnosis course. And then he contacted me like a year later and he says, you don't even know me, but I wanted to say thank you because after taking your self-hypnosis, I lost 50 pounds and kept it off. And I struggled for years and years to lose it. And now I have. You change your identity, behavior changes. You guys have anything to add?
Nope, on the money.
Yeah, I'll add that. I noticed, so he answered that question by first talking about like what creates the self. And so Tom was mentioning genetics and basically environmental and like the relationship with the mother. And so again, the sense of self and the identity are essentially inherently linked to, excuse me, like the childhood. And so
that's
he's
where
going about,
initially.
Yeah, he's talking about all this stuff like, we're really, really good at reading faces. And so if and this is especially important, like, again, we talk about how our parents are ultimately like gods. They're responsible for our survival. And so we're very, very quick to identify all of the facial micro movements around them. And so if you have parents that are super stressed out, babies are going to be able to detect those. They'll be able to detect the overall level of stress in the household. I mean, we're programmed. I mean, he's literally talking about the very, very micro movements and facial expressions.
Micro expressions, all of that. Yeah.
And, so there's not really much hiding it. So if you're a parent, you're like, how do I want to best raise my kids? Well, sort yourself out first. And so that you're not transferring all of the stress onto your kids. And, life is difficult, you're not going to be perfect, but, like the best service you can do your kids is to sort yourself out, ultimately, because they're absorbing everything.
I could not agree more.
100%.
And the children, if the parents are messed up, the kids will be messed up. there's just no way around. Now, once you're messed up, you can fix it. That's what we do. You don't need to stay messed up. But just I've had people coming to me. You guys tell me if this has happened to you. And I have a client come to me and they have tons of anxiety. And they weren't abused as a child, but they had a mother who was incredibly anxious all the time. And what happens as a child is you observe your mom always worrying. And, you know, again, it's different for different people, but this is a common situation that can play out. You observe your mom worrying all the time, being freaked out all the time, anxious all the time, and you adopt a belief the world is dangerous. That's why she's freaked out. That's how we should be. We need to be very careful. And now, as an adult, this person's constantly anxious, and it's screwing their life up, you know? And all they did was observe that in their parent. Holocaust survivors, they studied Holocaust survivors for decades. Found out the children had the same children who'd never been in concentration camps had the same trauma that the parents had who were in the death camps, the concentration camps. Why? Because they observed it in the parents.
Wow.
And yeah, there are decades long studies on that. And they found out the parents told the children stories about concentration camps, but just observing the trauma in the parents traumatized the children, because the children are going to draw conclusions. You know, why are my parents in such pain? Why are my parents so freaked out? Why are my parents so scared? Oh, geez, man, this must be a dangerous world. That's why. And then they internalize that, and that's in their subconscious. Now they're traumatized too. So, you know, I'm not trying to place blame on anyone. Life is difficult. We're just pointing out truths that if you struggle as an adult and you want to have the best outcome for your children, work on yourself. And it will change your behavior, but it will also change your interaction with your children and what they observe about you.
And it's not often like, so I think some people think that trauma has to be this like, oh, your parent was actively treating me bad. You know, they were beating me, emotionally manipulating me. It doesn't have to be that stuff, which I guess if you're trying to be a parent, don't be scared necessarily. Like, oh, like even if I'm trying to do the right thing, I'm going to mess everything up. It's like, no, but I mean, Ryan's very right. Like just observing someone being stressed, even if they're not taking that stress out on the child, because the child is thinking, okay, how they're learning, how should I interpret the world from my parent? How should I interpret what the world is like? And if the parent is always in this fight or flight mode constantly, then the child is going to think, well, in order to survive, I got to do the same thing.
That's literally what happened to me. My mom had tons of anxiety and I had tons of anxiety until I fixed it.
Yeah.
Just, you know, there was other things caused my anxiety, but that was a big one. So
right. Anything else? I was going to go back to
go back to the main thing. Good stuff.
All right.
Behavior, right? Start really looking at your behavior and you can make choices about your behavior. It's hard. You know, that's the other thing that people don't understand. Change is really hard. Change is like, oh yeah, just get inspired and change. Oh, no. I mean, there are fields of study looking at change. And change has a, you know, pre-contemplative, contemplative, execution, and then maintenance. The maintenance of change is what most people leave out. And most people are not able to maintain change. Even something simple like stopping cigarettes, exercise more, get your diet, take these pills every day. I can't get somebody to take pills every day.
Have you read the book Change or Die?
I've not read the book, but I will tell you that I've gotten fascinated. There are moments of change. People that really change usually have a moment. They can tell you the moment they change. Sometimes it feels like that's where it's sort of a spiritual piece fits into this. People feel like something stepped in from the outside and made them change or opened them to the possibility of change.
She just paused.
I've looked at this a little bit, and what I have found is
so he's literally talking about you have moments in your life where your brain rewires like that.
Yep.
And that's they don't really have a great name for it. They lump slow change and quick change all together into neuroplasticity. There's really two types of neuroplasticity. There's the slow repetition based. And when they're saying change is hard, they're talking about you have to stick with it and then just do something over and over and over and over again. And very gradually it's not guaranteed to, especially if it clashes with your identity, but it may over time slowly rewire your brain till it becomes a habit or easier. You're more used to it. He was saying earlier that he works out and now it's uncomfortable for him to not work out. So
I got that too.
Yeah, so he did make that change. He wasn't working out, and now he's working out regularly, and now he feels he needs it. So there's that repetition-based neuroplasticity that doesn't always stick. In fact, it can be really hard to get it to stick, but it can.
Yep.
Sometimes, people diet and then they gain the weight again. It's not working then. They're not sustaining. But there are times where you can have these instant changes and then everything's different after that. That is literally a scientifically established type of neuroplasticity. It's tied to emotionality and focus. And neuroscience has figured out there's literally ways to engineer that intentionally where you have that boom like that and then things are different. That is the core of what we do. The core of what we do is get that instant change. And it has to do with changing your core beliefs, changing your identity. And people can have it spontaneously too. And when people have it spontaneously, it's typically either it could be an aha moment that they've been building up to for a while, or it can be, I need to do this or I'll die. So their brain has this survival-based realization. Yeah, in order to survive, I need to do this. And there's always going to be emotionality there. So strong emotion and focus releases neurotransmitters that facilitate neuroplasticity. It releases acetylcholine and epinephrine or norepinephrine, which is type of adrenaline, although there's some differences between the two. So emotionality is huge. And that can happen spontaneously in life. It's usually some big event or big realization or something, but it can also be engineered. And neuroscience even has a name for it, predictive error mismatch memory reconsolidation, where you literally rewire beliefs. What they haven't yet realized is you can take that neuroscience technique, combine it with hypnosis, and accelerate it. And the mainstream science has not put the two together. In fact, most mainstream scientists don't even know about that neuroscience. We call it PEMR. They don't even know about that, even though the neuroscience is there. Most psychologists haven't gotten to that step. You combine them together, you can make these instant boom changes like that. And if you doubt what I'm saying is true, go to the video section and watch the 36 video interviews I have on there where people made quick, rapid, instant. We've done it for several hundred people between me, Tim, and Jordan, over 1,000 people, I believe. We do it all the time. So you can actually hack your identity that way and have the big instant change that he's talking about right now. It doesn't need to be happenstance, or it doesn't need to be, oh, I just had this realization. If I don't quit drinking, I'm going to die. And then someone quits drinking and stays sober. It doesn't have to come to that. You just do a session and change it before you get to that point. But we'll keep going. You guys have any comments?
No, the laws of education. I have a Bachelor of Science in education, right, with educational psychology mixed in. And a lot of things they talk about are the way people learn. And of course, people immediately jump to visual or manual or physical or whatever. But really what happens in the brain, regardless of the manner you're learning, is there is emotional impact, there's frequency, and there's the law of primacy. And primacy means that the first thing in becomes the most prevalent thing for that particular educational moment. So like Jordan mentioned, with the micro expressions of mom and dad and, making you feel belonged and loved and all that kind of stuff, not only the law of primacy are there, but you've got emotional impact. And if they do it over and over and over again, you've got this great repetition of this very good thing. Well, the opposite happens as well for negative things. One, first in, that's the one that wins. So if you have and sense as a baby, even the anxiety while in your mother's womb. All of a sudden, that law of primacy takes over, and you get that emotional impact, and it becomes very ingrained in your psyche, your brain, your soul, whatever you want to call it. That's what happens. So all of this is, fairly simple, but tremendously variable and complex across the many people that have to deal with it and learn from it. So good or bad. And like Jordan said, if you want to really raise great kids, or maybe it was Ryan that said it, fix yourself first. Because after you fix yourself first, you're now going to be feeding into your children what you want and what you are.
Yeah. Jordan gets the credit for that.
Yeah, there you go.
And I was also thinking, like, your child's also going to be picking up how you deal with stress. So if you encounter a stressful situation, the child will be able to tell. But if you also have a positive reaction and like you're able to handle it in a healthy way, they're also picking up on that too. So they're learning both the world can be stressful but it's going to be okay because I can handle it. So it's not like you're trying to wrap them in a bubble. You're trying to teach them that resilience. And I think Tim's point about, and I should have mentioned that too, about being in the womb and you can even experience the stress. Like that's, I mean, I think that might be a clear example for people to see, because it's like, they're like, oh, well, that's literally like it's a direct physical connection to the fetus. Like you are literally like pumping the stress hormones, to them. And so it's a very, and I think it's sad, but like I can see there's several examples I can think of off the top of my head of just people in my life who had that experience. Is like, there's one example I can think of. One of my girlfriend's, good friends, who's like, she was telling me how like her child like didn't seem to cry as often that they actually should have, and the concern was that child was already like, as like a 9-month-old or an 8-month-old, was learning to suppress their emotions. And that was just, he was born that way because of the stress that the mother was under, because of the tragic things that happened to her. And so it's like, definitely in the womb certainly has an impact.
Have you guys done a session where you've taken clients back to their birth or to the womb?
Not into the womb, but very young.
Yeah. So
go ahead. No, very young, basically their birth, but not the womb itself.
Yeah. I had 2 sessions. One is the Charles Ruffio client interview in the video section. He's the European guy with the beard, good-looking guy. And he was born with a club foot and had a traumatic, painful birth because of that. And we took him back to his birth and released that trauma. I had another guy who was born with the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, almost killed him when he was born. And he had trauma from that. So I've actually gone back twice to births to release trauma, and it really helped the client. And like, you're in the session and they're like, my leg, like when the guy's being born and he has this twisted foot, and the other guy was like, I feel it around my neck. And I was like, holy crap. They literally, their subconscious remembers their birth. Like everything. We consciously don't.
Everything.
Yeah. I was taken back into the womb when I was conscious as a baby in the womb. I don't, I imagine it more like 7-8 months or very early on. And I had a hypnotist take me back to the womb, and I felt all this anxiety that was coming from my mom because she has a ton of trauma. And I was like, oh, dang, that's where, and that was one of the things that helped me overcome my anxiety, because I used to have anxiety 24/7. Like, I'd fall asleep anxious. Like, it sucked, just insomnia. We're not meant to get rid of all of our anxiety, but a lot of anxiety doesn't serve us. Some does. And you don't want to get rid of the anxiety that does serve you. And I don't think you can, but I got rid of all that. And part of that journey of getting rid of the dysfunctional anxiety was actually going back to my womb and when I was in the womb of my mother and releasing that. It's insane, but it's true. And I would say everyone should watch this entire interview. I did include the video clip to this interview in the description. It's the Impact Theory or Tom Bilyeu. It's Tom Bilyeu Now channel. Watch the whole thing because they talk about some crazy stuff that science has established and determined. And the power of our subconscious mind and what it remembers and incorporates is just off the hook. It's just, and how our subconscious picks up on other people and what's going on with them that our conscious mind doesn't pick up, and vice versa. It's insane. And they talk about it in the later on, and it's definitely worth a watch if we don't get to it today.
I want to say, like, Jerry Wise had this framing I liked, that when you're absorbing the anxiety in your mom's womb, it's not your anxiety, it's hers that you have to let go. And so I like that framing, that I like that kind of the framing that it's not yours, it's just attached to you. And so I think that kind of separates this idea. Like, I mean, certainly you can have your own anxieties. That's not impossible. But I like the idea that other people are projecting, or they're putting their problems onto you that you have to then release. So that can be a helpful frame if you grew up in that environment.
I think you certainly learn it there, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We can keep going. You guys are ready?
Yep.
Every case I've looked at, I find these people, and obviously I've seen a lot of addicts that, first of all, if they feel they're going to die. If they believe they're going to die, they're like, okay, what do I need to do?
Is that pretty universal?
Drug addicts for sure. I can't universalize it, but drug addicts for sure. When they really, sometimes they have near-death experiences and don't believe they're going to die.
Right.
But when they believe they're going to die, they change. But that doesn't interest me. That's an easy one. The one that interests me is the following: when people all of a sudden go, "Oh my God," and they change. What I found with those people is they usually were hanging around with somebody, having an intimate sort of conversation and time with somebody who was sort of different than what they would normally hang with. And so from my perspective, it's literally they're using the other to see themselves through a new pair of glasses. Like they're experiencing themselves differently. Because normally we are attracted to people that sort of fit our models of what we like and how our attachments work, and whatever our traumatic reenactments are, we just go for that. That's what we do as humans. Not enough is made of how fucked up attractions are. I mean, attraction, what we're attracted to usually often comes from a not so great place in our childhood.
I definitely want to talk about that, but
okay.
I wanted to finish this.
These people I found were usually sort of hanging out with somebody and spending time and time and time, and all of a sudden, they actually didn't make the connection with the hanging out with a different person. I'd start asking them about it. I usually would find that there. But all of a sudden, they would see themselves. All of a sudden. Like one woman was hugely obese, and she was walking by. So she told me the exact window she was walking by. I think it was in Pasadena at a Macy's, and there was a mirror. And she walked by, and she said, I saw myself. And I'm like, oh, my God. I'm disgusting. I got to change. Wow. Disgust is the motivator. I have another patient who was... She was a nurse, she was in denial. I've been trying for years to get her sober, and she was in an IVs and in hospitals and getting surgery, anything to get the opiates, right? And she said one day, she was walking into the hospital bathroom with her IV and looked in the mirror and saw herself. In that moment. So like it broke through all the denial, but the experience...
So we started this by saying it's the other, but that's two stories of people seeing in the mirror. What is it about that externalization?
No. They were able to see themselves differently because they had been hanging out with somebody different.
I see.
They were seeing themselves.
So what was in those relationships, do you think?
Just a different fittedness, a new pair of glasses, the way I think of it. Like somebody new, a novel perception of who they were, not the usual patterns that they engaged in.
So let me say this another way, just to make sure I understand it.
Yeah.
So hanging out with somebody new is literally like you're syncing up in a way that's now causing you to
see yourself differently or experience yourself differently. And we know that happens. That's what therapy is. That's what therapy is, taking you into a new relationship, a new kind of relationship. And each little step in that therapy, you experience yourself sort of differently in that context.
Do you buy into the notion that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Okay, so he's talking about people shifting their identity. It can happen spontaneously, although it's rare. But you can engineer it for it, which is what we do. You can engineer it so these aha moments or these big internal shifts are like that in a session. So there's a process to change it. And science has already established the process. It just hasn't put 2 and 2 together that you can further accelerate the process with hypnosis. which is what we do. But they're talking about shifts in identity, and I want to point that out. And so I wish he would have put it a little bit different when he said, I'm disgusting. It's what's going on there is that lady gets a new concept of who she is or where she should be. And so there's a shift in her identity, and then she sees herself in the mirror. And what's going on there is a realization, holy crap, this is not a match for me. I'm looking in the mirror and seeing, I'm 100 pounds overweight. She only has that after there's a shift in identity. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
And that's what he's talking about. He's talking about people are and what's going on is they're interacting with other people that are giving them an outside perspective, and there's an internal shift, and maybe they don't even realize there's a shift until they look at themselves in the mirror and say, wow, this is not who I should be. This morbidly obese person, or, this drug addict or whatever. And it's because there's been a shift in their identity. So what happens?
If I heard Dr. Drew, not knowing what I know now, and I heard that, what I would think of is, you look in the mirror at house, at your home, and you may not actually have a full length mirror or see yourself from a distance on the street. And delusionally, you will tell yourself, this is my identity. I want to be just like this. This is how I think I look. And then when you get a distant shot of yourself, it doesn't match up. And you now immediately recognize that, wow, something has to change.
Yeah.
So could be a mindset. It could be a realization. Don't know exactly what it is for every single person, but at some point, somewhere in the brain, what you realize you really are is different than you really think you are or want to be.
Yeah. Now, great point, Tim. And the title of the video we're watching or commenting on is about how disgust can facilitate change. Later on, Dr. Drew talks about disgust is not toxic shame. Toxic shame is who I really am at my core isn't good enough. And then disgust is I'm not where I should be. It's like, wow, you look in the mirror, oh, geez, someone morbidly obese. And what that is, it's them realizing what they've done to themselves with their weight, or maybe you did something else, like you did something really stupid and you land in jail for a couple years because you were very dumb and, accidentally, maybe not accidentally, but made a poor choice and committed a crime. Excuse me. Realizing what I did or the life I'm living is not a match for who I am that's what disgust is. Like self-disgust.
Yep.
Toxic shame is, no, this is who I am. So if that lady looked in the mirror and said, I am this morbidly obese woman and that's just who I am, and then she would get depressed, that would be toxic shame. Disgust is, oh my goodness, I need to change because this ain't me.
I have heard people look at themselves in a photograph
and then they change
and say, is that me? They almost don't even recognize themselves.
Yeah. So what happens is our identity, our subconscious beliefs, core beliefs, are like gravity. They will pull us to where these beliefs are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have this belief, Arnold Schwarzenegger has this belief that, and we've done analysis of him talking about how, he loves being big and fit and strong, and it's so great. And he sees himself as a champion, and then his subconscious pulls his identity. If he feels that in his core, goes out and works out every day. And so now Dr. Drew, he's like, I have a little body dysmorphia. I think he was kind of halfway joking, halfway serious.
I thought he was joking there.
Yeah, he's more joking, but I think it's the same thing. At some point, he saw himself in the mirror and said, man, my chest is sagging. I got a bit of a gut. but he's a very emotionally healthy person. And when he says body dysmorphia is, it's a condition where he is joking because he doesn't have it exactly. You look at like, my nose is huge, and even though it's maybe just a little big, but you think you have this big ogre nose. So body dysmorphia is like your self-image like is disproportionate, or it's your self-image is distorted, like your image of how you physically look, like one body part or the whole body is distorted. That's in a negative way. That's body dysmorphia. Right. But he has, at some point he looked in front of, if this happens to me, by the way, is I'll be in shape for many years. I'll be at like 180 pounds, and I'm more than that now. But I do have this cycle, and it's a very slow cycle, by the way, because I've had like 5, 6, 7 years periods where I'm at 180 pounds and fit and looking great, and then I'll like gain 15, 16 pounds, and I'll look in the mirror and I'll like, oh, and then get back down. And I feel a little bit of that, but it's not a shame feeling. It's, oh yeah, you're letting yourself go, man. You got to fix this. So I understand where he's coming from and where they talk about disgust, but it's definitely not a toxic shame feeling. It's, this isn't a fit for me.
Right.
You know, I deserve better. Really, that's what it is. I deserve better, and I've been negligent. And because you have a healthy identity, maybe you're not paying attention, or and you let yourself go in some ways, but sooner or later you get too far away. Let's say you have a healthy core identity, you get too far away from this high self-esteem you have about yourself, and all of a sudden your brain's like, nope, let's get back in shape. But it can go the other way too, which is you see yourself as an overweight person and you lose the weight, and then your subconscious says, this isn't me. I'm not this fit person. My identity is this overweight person. And then you gain the weight again.
Yep.
So whatever our identity is gravity. It will pull us to where we believe we should be based on our identity deep down.
Yep.
So people who feel like a loser, like Dr. K said, if you feel like you're a loser, other people treat you like a loser, but you're going to keep on struggling until your sense of who you are changes. The Dr. K video earlier. Go ahead.
And I like that analogy of gravity. I've often said a similar thing, like your subconscious beliefs tilt your behavior towards certain actions. And like you can fight gravity if you want, but isn't it so much easier if you're being pulled towards the behaviors that actually serve you rather than the behaviors and feelings that don't? Why spend all that energy trying to fight yourself? It's like, I think of it like a health bar. Like we all have a health bar at the beginning of the day, and we only have so much energy and effort we can point towards so many things. And if you're spending some of that health bar trying to fight yourself and trying to force yourself into situations that you want to be in, but your core identity isn't aligned with, then it's like you're playing tug of war with yourself. And that's a lot of energy. It's not very efficient. So it's much more efficient to just align that center of gravity, if you will, with the things you actually value and desire.
I like that analogy.
So you're not at war with yourself. You're not your own worst enemy. People are like, I'm my own worst enemy. And it's like, yeah, your subconscious core beliefs are different from where you want to be. And that's what's causing that internal struggle. What's that?
You can also be your own best champion.
You absolutely can.
How sad to think you are your own worst enemy. I mean, that's a very sad way of thinking about it. I know they say
I used to feel that way a long time ago.
Yeah, it's not a fun perspective, because then you don't really like yourself either. You're like, man, I just self-sabotage, or I mean, to think of yourself really as an enemy, like
self-hatred. Yeah.
Anything else? We can go back to the video.
Yeah, let's keep going.
All
right. I don't know. I would more argue that you would choose to spend time around those 5 people with. It's yourself sort of differently in that context.
Do you buy into the notion that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
I would more argue that you would choose to spend time around those 5 people because of some pre-existing pattern.
Yeah.
And we have maps in our brain. We have maps and patterns and things that we tend to reenact.
All right, so talk about that with the attraction. Why
So again, I get to see extreme examples of that. But anyway, these people, when they see themselves as they are, they feel disgust, and disgust is a powerful motivator. Disgust is something that sustains. Then they change. They lose the weight. They do. Have you ever noticed when you're in a diet, when you finally get disgusted with yourself, you're like, oh, all of a sudden I can diet better.
Can we just burn the comments down and talk about self-loathing for a second?
Well, self-loathing is different.
Then disgust.
I think it's different.
Really?
Yeah.
Self-loathing. You're so good at defining terms. Like I'm.
Now they're going to discuss the difference between disgust, which is my current situation is in a bad way, not where I should be. That's disgust. Self-loathing is toxic shame. So now they're going to explain the difference between the two. Go ahead.
I'm scared to challenge you, but like, tell me.
Well, self-loathing is closer to hate, right? And disgust is a very primitive, it's a yucky feeling.
Okay.
Hate doesn't motivate the way disgust
You don't
does.
think?
Well, it doesn't. Hate gets, again, I'm following my thinking here. Hate gets connected to shame. I'm bad.
Okay.
There
And
you
shame
go.
is a deflating emotion. It takes you down. It's not
Wow, this is interesting.
I'm gonna die and I'm disgusting. It's like I fucking got to change. I got to do something about this. But I'm bad. Why would you change? I'm already bad. I'm shameful. I want to be not seen. You want to shrink with shame.
It's interesting. I guess because I don't think of,
Yep.
I think of humans as so malleable, and that your past is not necessary to defining who you can become. That now, admittedly, that's sort of my own belief system. So, but I get what you're saying now about disgust, and that is incredibly powerful. And when you said, by the way, that the woman walked by the mirror and said, "I'm disgusting,"
Yeah.
I like literally internally cringed. I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're not like caveating that story. Like, no, it's okay to be overweight." Like,
No, I got to do something. I'm changing.
you talked about addiction and said, you know,
Pause
one of the
real
number
quick
one
again.
questions that I get.
So I'm just pointing out earlier, he said the lady got a new perspective of who she was. And the reason it had to come from an outside source is she needed additional information to shift her sense of identity.
Yep.
And then, so she got it from maybe someone who believes in her, etc. Now, honestly, it doesn't happen a lot. It's kind of the exception to the rule where where people have identity shifts in this way, but you know, it happens from time to time. So they notice this pattern. So she had a shift in identity and then felt the disgust. And he said, people who change in this way, there's some outside source that gives them new information that makes them readjust their sense of self. And then they feel the disgust and then the change comes. But it's fundamentally different from just feeling you're not good enough, which is that shame he's talking about, which will drag you down. Shame drags you down. Disgust is I'm not where I should be.
Yeah, it's just not up to the standard.
I'm where I am is not a match for my identity, and in a negative way where I am isn't. That's disgust. And so that's what they're talking about. Big, huge difference. So again, not all negative emotions are bad. If anger leads you to protect yourself and defend yourself or defend a loved one, someone punched your, girlfriend or child in the face and then you beat the shit out of that person, good emotion. Good. They were violent. You defend yourself with violence or defend your loved ones to get them to back the hell off. They think twice about doing it again. And so does everyone else because they saw you just defended yourself. That's good anger. If there's, if you're in a situation where you are in physical danger and you're afraid or you're anxious because you're about to do something that's actually really stupid and has big negative potential consequences, that is fear and anxiety serving you, helping you. So this disgust, oh, geez, I just realized I'm in this state right now, or there's this thing about me that is not a match for who I am and who I should be. Again, negative. So not all negative emotions are bad. They oftentimes can be bad and maladaptive, but a lot of times they can help us.
Yep.
Just wanted to point that out, the difference.
Ryan, do you
Shame is
want to
never
keep
good.
on? do you want to keep going from where we are? Or do you want to skip ahead to 38 minutes? We can always do a part 2 next week. What are you feeling?
Oh,
I feel like it's still pretty good where we are. Can always do
yeah.
part 2.
Let's play a little bit more.
Okay. Sounds cool.
Fast as if there's a genetic component to this, then there must be some conferred advantage.
Oh, yeah.
Your explanation of that was so breathtaking.
Right, there had to be, right? I mean, this is a gene that's been persistent in the genome essentially throughout human history.
Right.
So there's got to be some adaptive advantage to it. And when you look at people with addictions, why I have zero moral feelings about addiction. Addiction makes people do some morally reprehensible things, but the use of the substance and the disease is not moral. In fact, these people are extraordinary. They make great fighter pilots. They make great extreme athletes. They make great shortstops. They're phenomenal survivors in extreme adversity. So doesn't it make sense that in isolated populations that are distressed, like there's assaulted for multiple generations, that would be the population that survives? Well, that's what we find. If you look on the globe where there's the highest sort of concentration of alcoholism and it's the most intense genetically, Scotland, Ireland, North American Indian, isolated populations, military genocidal assaults typically, survivors, alcoholics.
That is fascinating. Is there a similar evolutionary glimpse into why we try to recreate, or why we do recreate these attractions to
the past?
Yeah.
I think it might have some sort of, I've been thinking a lot about this, I think it has some sort of offload memory function. In other words, like, why do people of Jewish heritage practice Passover every year? Why do they do that? I believe that ritual is an offloaded traumatic memory. So they do like if we were going to remember the blood of the lamb and the Passover and all that stuff, no way you'd remember. Generation after generation, you would get telephoned into God knows what, right? It would turn into some myth and something about a dragon. Who the hell knows? But when we do the same behavior every year and we eat the same things the way they did, they went through this, we're experiencing the same thing. Every year, we do it as a ritual. That's an offloaded traumatic memory. And I think repetition compulsion is a similar thing. But you would think it's kind of gone bad in some way. In other words, we're repeating a trauma that we should be avoiding. And somehow and maybe the people that are repeating traumatic experiences are sort of the canary in the coal mine for everybody else, possibly. I think what we're ultimately going to find is that whatever that mechanism is probably the same mechanism that allows for intense, deep emotional attachments in a healthy way that just gets sick, just goes off.
So here's one thing that I found interesting about people who are highly dramatic.
Yeah.
I get enough glimpse of it in myself to sort of know what that looks like, where merely having a strong emotion in any direction, there's a intoxication of that. There's a sense of,
you get high.
You're heightened, like you're alive. So even though it's bad, it's at least elevated.
Yes. That's a complex landscape. Some people do get high from it. My addicts get high from drama, for sure. In their early recovery, they are the most dramatic people on earth. They are dramatic as hell. And they love creating drama and conflict because they get high on it. I've been thinking a lot now about exactly what you're asking about the evolution of the self. How do we take control of the self? And the human gathering thing I did that you probably saw.
Yeah.
Wes Chapman has this little theory that I really got under my skin, that there's so much victim in our culture that if we could flip it into a hero archetype, we would help people mobilize exactly what you're talking about. And there's something about that. There's something happening. I almost believe that I was never Jungian. I never found any use for that. But all of a sudden I started thinking, this country had sort of a hero archetype until the 60s. Then it became the anti-hero and the antisocial.
Right.
So I want to come.
Good point.
I'll let you go first. Yeah, you go first.
So he is right that we need more of a hero mentality rather than a victim mentality. But what I think happened earlier before the 60s, because the 60s is when it really exploded. So it must have happened 18, 20 years before then, was this subconscious trauma and this narcissism and fear through wars. And who knows what the complex makeup of it was, but it erupted on society and it just sort of flung itself into flower children, peace, love, drugs, all that kind of stuff. And now we have continued that shifting into victim mentality rather than hero, where in your subconscious, you think you're a victim rather than being a hero.
Do you think the United States, and actually around the world, in Europe too, it's happening? Do you think we're flipping to hero now?
There's going to be
make America great again. What's that?
In the coming years, there will be a shift that will get more hero mentality. But man, broken people are broken people, and man, they're loud and noisy.
Well, I'm wondering if a shift is happening right now. And what I mean by that is, Make America Great Again has hero overtones.
Yep.
There's adversity. We're down and out, but you know what? We're going to rise up like a phoenix. That's kind of a heroic, and that's Make America Great Again. Now, there's resistance
optimism
to that, but you see the whole victim thing, which is, started out with feminism. Oh, we're oppressed and all this. And, maybe there's some truth to that, but there's a lot that's not true there as well. Like, they say, this feminist quote, women need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Absolute bullshit. If all men stop working today, then all the infrastructure collapses, because it's men who are, down in the sewers, building the roads, constructing, all of that, engineers. Yeah, there's some females too, but it's like 90% guys.
By and large, men.
So yeah, there's a lot of bullshit in feminism. I'm just gonna call it out right now. Maybe there's some grains of truth in there too. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't want anyone to be forced to do something, I'm all about agency and women being valued just as much as men, while realizing that they're different, obviously. But it started out with this victim mindset. The Duluth model is women are always victims, men are always the perpetrator. Automatically, any domestic dispute, the guy is the villain, he goes to jail, the woman is always that is the Duluth model. You cannot deny this. It is so established. And so that, but with everything, communism is victim model.
Yep.
It's the victims who are oppressed, and it could be seen as hero too, or overthrowing. But the problem with communism is all it is about overthrow. And that's now what do we do? Well, communism has nothing to say about what you do after you overthrow the oppressors. And we already know from history that it's a train wreck. But you have this whole victim mindset that culminated in trans rights. And as trans were so victimized and oppressed, you have to let a trans male to female into women's bathrooms and vice versa, compete, trans men competing, and it culminated in parents lose the rights to keep their kids from having sex change operations as a child. I mean, just absolute insanity, just the insanity of. And again, I'm not against trans people, but putting them up here to the expense of the rest of society, damaging the rest of society is ridiculous. They don't have more rights than the rest of society. They don't have a right to go in.
They are
to a
human
woman's
beings.
bathroom where a 6-year-old girl's using the bathroom and making her uncomfortable, or possibly traumatizing her or opening her up to danger. They don't have that effing right. But this victim mentality brought them there.
I agree with you. They are human beings that could have or do have immense value and worth. They just don't know it.
Yeah. And we don't want anyone to think that we don't think every human on this planet doesn't have some sort of intrinsic value, because every human does. But we've seen this victim mentality grow like a cancer in our society. Yep. And people are finally, you see in Argentina, they elected Bilyeu. I forget the leader of Italy, but it's this lady who's very conservative. And it seems like to some degree the world and every county in America got more red during the last election with Trump. Now, I think Trump is doing some really good things. I think he's making some big mistakes in some areas too. So I'm not like, I'm not like 100% pro Trump, but I'm not 100% against him either. I think some stuff he's doing is very necessary. But there is a shift in our country, in the United States, and I'm hoping it continues to shift from a victim society to hero. Let's make America great again. Not in like, is there some toxicity there? You know, probably. I mean, again, we shouldn't worship Trump no matter what. He's a flawed human being. He has some big flaws.
Very.
But at the same time, I think there's evidence of this flip from victim mode to hero mode. I hope it sticks. What do you guys think?
I agree.
There's something else he was
the Charlie
talking
Kirk
about.
thing. Look at that, man. Holy cow.
He was talking about
300,000 at his funeral.
What was he talking about before the shift to the United States? Something about
he's talking about flipped in from victim to hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, is that happening in our society now?
Dr. Drew said we need more hero, less victim.
Yeah, and I hope
The
that's
same things
happening right
they
now.
did.
I think it might be.
They went through this. We're experiencing the same thing.
I lost my train of thought.
Bring his video back up.
One tad until I remember.
Every year we do it as a ritual. That's an offloaded traumatic memory. And I think
What that looks like, where merely having a strong emotion in any direction, there's a intoxication to that.
Oh, that's what I was talking about. So he was talking about why some people have an affinity for drama. And I was going to speculate on that. And I think that he was talking about how some people, they just want to feel some sort of strong emotion. And I think that that's partially correct. My analysis is more they want to feel that they need attention. If they're causing drama, people are at least not ignoring them.
Yeah, there's some validation there.
Well, they get off their drug and now they have all this drama. I think the drama is replacing the drug, but in what way does it replace it? And the drug is covering pain and shame. Okay, that's gone. What are we going to do? Let's generate a bunch of strong emotions that will also act to cover this inner shame. That's why I think they do it.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't have my drug anymore. What am I going to do to get away from this shame? And what you see this in our society, people who are deeply shamed, again, you see this in the woke movement, the trans movement. They don't want to face their own shame, that they feel horrible about themselves, so they blame everyone around them and create a ton of drama. That's Antifa.
And then they have to think they got to fix everybody.
That's the victim mindset. You know, these victims create a ton of drama, and then they externalize. They don't take any accountability for their own life. A lot of these people in poverty do this. Instead of taking accountability, which actually get them out of poverty, or at least move them in that direction. I'm the victim. Everyone else is bad. What are they doing? They're externalizing the reason for their shame. It's everyone else's fault, so I don't have to feel shame for the situation I'm in. And what does that do? It keeps them down. If they felt disgust, man, I'm not where I should be. Man, look at me. I'm living in this dump. Man, I got to get my shit together. All right, let's go out and do job applications tomorrow. What kind of skill can I get? Can I take vocational training, get some skills? Disgust would drive them. I'm not where I should be. Oh, look at the terrible situation I'm in. It's not a match for me, as opposed to shame. I'm not good enough. But then you want to do anything to not feel your shame. So it's not me. It's everyone around me. You are bad. You are bad. You are bad. Shift blame outward so you don't have to blame yourself. That's what shame does. And that's victim mindset and all this other woke bullshit, Antifa bullshit you see. That's what's at the core. They're trying to avoid feeling shame, and they're trying to avoid accountability, because then you have to look at yourself. Yeah. Disgust is accountability. Disgust is.
Well, and you can watch it. I've seen examples of people, they're, content creators. They go out and they interview these people, and they like it's like they hit this glitch in their programming. I mean, it really feels like programming, because they say things like, oh, we'll have you consider this thing. And they're like, get this camera away. Like, they don't even want to even start to go down the route of I might be the problem.
Shame.
I mean, we've talked, how many times have we talked about narcissists on this program?
Yeah. They blame everyone but themselves.
Well, and not even, they do that, but it's like the moment you even, they're so sensitive to this idea of self-protection that the moment you even start to imply that it could be even a shared responsibility, any responsibility on them, they'll deflect away. And I've, dealt with a lot of that in 2025. And even worse than that, if that so-called narcissist, I mean, let's just take a theoretical example out of the air. Theoretical. If that so-called narcissist happens to enter therapy and finds a therapist who simply validates all of their experiences rather than actually showing them that they're part of the problem, then that narcissism will simply become worse. So some of these people, they're like locked into this forever because they can't change, and especially if they now have an authority figure, the so-called
telling them, no, it's not. You don't need to take accountability. You're just
validated.
Yeah, it'll never.
And there's therapists who do that. Absolutely, there's a lot who do that.
And it's more like, is it the therapist's fault? Is it the narcissist's fault? Well, you could probably put blame on both of these people, but in reality, when a narcissist finds a therapist who wants them to take accountability, they'll just drop out of the therapy and until they find one that actually just validates
what they want to hear.
Sort of a selection bias.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%, man.
That's all I got.
All right. So the whole thing about shame, toxic shame, is it's a lie. It's a lie that's been internalized, and then it causes a victim behavior, all this other stuff. And then do these people change? No. Because whether they acknowledge their shame or not, the shame is there telling them they're not good enough, and it keeps them in victim mindset. It keeps them small. It keeps them minimum wage job, whatever. But then you shift your identity. That's where the disgust, I'm better than this, man. Look at this dump I'm in. Look at me being overweight, just whatever. I'm better than this. I'm going to change. And what Dr. Drew said, the disgust comes after that internal shift.
Yep.
And it doesn't need to be disgust. It could be, geez, I'm not where I should be. Man, you know what? I'm going to kick some ass. It doesn't need to be disgust. It could just be, you know what? I could do better. And then you feel good, and then you go out and get it. That can happen too.
It's not disgust at yourself. It's more
you're just not up to your own standard.
Yeah. You're like, I'm not meeting my standards. Well, your standards are tied to your identity. This is where I should be.
You know it.
And so the reason my income went up, Tim was with me when I had my 911 Turbo, and, had a lot of success. Tim's had a lot of success in life. So has Jordan. Well, we all have a high identity. So, but my identity used to be in the dumpster. It used to be terrible. And when I shifted it, then the success came. We've seen that for a lot of our clients. So if our audience wants permanent change, I have a guy in this audience, I did a session for him, and he'd been at this job where they were treating him like crap for, I don't know, a year, 2 years, whatever. And I did a session. Now he feels better about himself. He's like, screw it, I'm quitting this job. And then he goes out on his own. Now he's independent and he's making money. But now he has freedom. And now, he's not trapped in a job where people disrespect him. So you change the identity, and then your situation, your environment changes. For any of our audience who's not happy with where they're at in life, change your identity. We can help. It's what we do. We shift identities. We get that toxic shame out and belief in your inherent ability and value in, and then things change. You guys have any final words?
Nope, that's on the money.
Anything, Jordan?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I'm stalling while I get it to my little outro here. So you guys can change. Dr. Drew, one thing I want to point out is, he said, well, therapy incrementally, bit by bit, will get you better. And he talks about it's very hard to change and all of that. He doesn't understand you can rewire your brain. We go back to our episode, I think there's 2 on coherence therapy. and they had the same complaints. They're like, normal therapy, it takes a long time. It's very incremental. It's partial change. That's what repetition does. That's how repetition rewires you. It's less efficient. It's far less efficient, far less effective. But there's therapies out there right now. EMDR can do it too, to a point. So can internal family systems. They're just not as powerful because they haven't added hypnosis to the mix. If they did, then they'd be getting 5 times faster. But at least they're on the right track, and they know how to rewire the brain more quickly than just with repetition. They're actually going in and changing these root core beliefs. So, and that's what we can do. You guys can do it. It's changed my life. It's changed Jordan's life. Carrie, your wife, always wanted to start a business and always tried and always failed. And then one session, boom, rewired that. And now she's tripled her income, started a business right away after that. It doesn't need to be this slow repetition, slowly building up it doesn't need to be that. You can have big, rapid internal shifts, and then the external follows. You can really do it. You do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thanks, everyone, for watching.